Welcome to the CURES digital show and podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. This episode is sponsored by the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services. We thank them for that. So could a video game help your child with ADHD? I'm joined by Dr. Scott Kollins about a first of its kind ADHD treatment with an FDA-approved video game called EndeavorRx. Welcome, doctor.
Thanks, Kara. It's nice to be here.
You know, I think this sounds to most parents like, oh, this is too good to be true. My child loves to play video games, especially kids with ADHD often love to play them even more. So how is this possible? What is this video game that's approved to help improve attention?
Yeah, so this is the product that's out there in the field now is the result of nearly a decade of science to actually design a game that is that's targeted to address the parts of the brain that are actually impacted in ADHD. And so it started back in the early 2010s with a series of research studies out of the laboratory of Adam Ghazali at the University of California, San Francisco. The findings were such that it led them to say this could really actually be useful. It's not just academic anymore. And so they partnered, they spun the company out, partnered with real video game designers to actually put the graphics and the parts of the game that are actually engaging. And then I came into the picture when I was on the faculty at Duke University to help design clinical studies to evaluate this in kids diagnosed with ADHD, which were successful and had the outcomes that they were expecting. That led then to going to the Food and Drug Administration to say, look, here's our data. It works. It's safe. Can we get cleared to actually market this as a product for ADHD?
So this comes at a time also, not only when parents are always looking for alternatives or complementary practices, but there's actually a nationwide shortage of Adderall, a very common ADHD medication. Is this something that families could turn to?
Absolutely. I mean, this is it is unfortunate that unfortunately our state of care management for ADHD today is it stands to have a lot of improvements. It's been the same for many years, and there's really only two kinds of commonly used treatments. There's medication, and then there's psychological or behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy can be hard to access. There's sort of inconsistencies in how it might be covered by insurance, which leaves really medication as the only option. And now when you've got shortages, it really puts families in a bind. So this is absolutely an option that is available.
So explain to us how this could actually work, because we know that in some ways, the video games that are out there just cause more distraction. Kids with ADHD might be able to hyper focus on them, but they're only getting that, that little dopamine hit. How is this different?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and really important to also keep in mind that this product was specifically designed as a treatment. So it wasn't designed to engage and entertain for hours and hours on end. In fact, it's hard and it's challenging for kids. But the way that it was designed, with the way that the sort of the mechanics of the game work, the kids are using their motor skills to drive a character, and they're also using their attention and their sort of impulse control to be able to touch different stimuli that appear. Those were built in very specifically and tested, like I said, over years to make sure that they were actually having an impact on the kinds of things that are important in ADHD. And that's different, I think. I mean, we don't have data on all the other video games that are out there, but that's the principal difference, that this was really, it was designed first as a medical treatment, and the video game was added on top in order to keep people engaged.
So we've done enough interviews on this show to know that really ADHD is a disorder of executive function, which is housed in the prefrontal cortex. So is this video game, is it designed to then create more neural connections, or how is it working?
It is the way that I think about it. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. This is exercising the parts of the brain, some of which are connected in the prefrontal cortex, it's exercising those circuits that are otherwise not working quite the same in kids that have ADHD. So yeah, you're exactly right. And some of the early science actually substantiated that. So they looked at people who were playing the game. They looked at their brain activity via an EEG and found that, yes, when you do the game, your brain activity changes over time.
So yeah, talk about the clinical trials. Again, this is a new FDA authorized treatment, the first and only FDA authorized treatment delivered through a video game experience. So what did you find? I understand you studied kids ages 8 to 12.
Yep, that's right. So there were really two, there's actually been, I think, about half a dozen clinical studies with about 600 patients over the years, but there were two that were primarily used as part of the package or the basis to go to seek clearance for this. The first was a very traditional randomized controlled trial wherein kids came in and they were randomly, like a coin flip, assigned to either get the active treatment or a control condition, which was a digitally delivered spelling game. And they used that 5 days a week, 25 minutes a day for a month, for 4 weeks. And at the beginning of the study, we measured their attentional functioning via an objective computer measure of attention, as well as parent and clinician ratings of their symptoms, as well, importantly, as well as their impairment, how much their ADHD is impacting their day-to-day function. And then we measured the same things a month later. And compared to the control condition, Endeavor, or the version of it that was used in the trial, significantly improved attention on the objective measure of attention, and it also improved impairment. So the degree to which that kids were actually able to function better in their day-to-day lives. That was study one. Study two was not it was not randomized, so there's not a control condition, but we really wanted to evaluate how this looked in sort of more real-world settings. Randomized controlled trials are a little bit artificial. They're designed very rigorously to serve a purpose. So we designed a second study where kids came in particular, because we had excluded kids in the first study that were taking medication. And we know that most kids with ADHD take medication. So we allowed those kids into the second study because we wanted to see, does this still make a difference for kids if they're taking medicine? And they also, instead of just 1 month, they were treated in that second study for a month. They went off treatment for a month, and then they did another month of treatment. So 3 months total. And what we found was very similar. We saw improvements in attention and impairment over the first month. It sort of leveled off during that month where they weren't getting treatment. They started treatment again, and then we saw some continued improvement. So that was those were the basic summary of those two studies.
So just to clarify, when they stopped playing, did the results go away, or this is actually training the brain so they're learning, like the much way you build a muscle, the muscle stays?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So based on the data from the studies, they did not go back to where they were when they entered the study. They sort of, I'm drawing with my hand, they improved. Improvement was a decrease in some of the scores, and then it leveled off, and then they improved further.
So how do parents get this? I have to, because of what I do for a living, I keep up on this. And, I remember seeing stuff in Attitude Magazine, which is a great resource for parents, about EndeavorRx. For a long time, I've seen stuff like that. Maybe it's new that it's now FDA approved, so I'm excited to have you on the show. But I remember even asking some pretty smart doctors in our area about it, and they didn't know much about it. So if parents are hearing this and saying, I want it, do the pediatricians know about it? Can this be covered by insurance?
Yeah, two really important questions. I think the answer to both of those in general is not yet. So we just started sort of formally launching the product in the last 2 or 3 months, and we've had good uptake. Yeah, we've got kids, thousands of kids have been prescribed this in all 50 states, but we really want to really focus our efforts in this next year to educate and raise awareness to healthcare providers. It is not covered by insurance by and large, and that is an issue. And that's especially linking back to what we talked about before in terms of what options are actually available for parents. Right. And now you've got one of those options because of supply chain issues off the table. It's really important that we continue to work with the payers and provide the information that they need to make good decisions about coverage. But the simplest way for either a provider or a parent is to just go to the EndeavorRx.com website, and all the information about getting the prescription and the clinical studies and things like that can be found there.
Okay. Can we talk about like just how much it costs, and are there payment plans if parents want to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. The retail cost is about $430 a month, I think. But especially because of the issues with insurance coverage, at least for the time being, it's being offered now for $99 a month.
Okay. And how many months would someone do this? Do you know, are kids just going to? I'm thinking, it's already difficult sometimes, especially for kids with ADHD when they've got homework and other things, to get them to do another thing. Now, maybe they enjoy this. You can tell me about that. But how long do they have to do this? Because parents are saying,
well,
it's not so hard
so
to
that's
get
actually
take a
that's a if we stick to the data that from the clinical studies, we know that even after 2 out of 3 months of treatment, you will continue to see benefit. So we have not studied it beyond that. So the recommendation is really that get through that first month and with a refill, and then sort of evaluate. And we're very interested in continuing to study out in the real world, so to speak, and gather data so that we can provide better information about questions like that.
How do you do this? What kind of equipment do you need, or do you get everything given to you?
It's not given to you. You need either an Apple or an Android device, phone or tablet.
That's it. Okay, so it's an app-based program. So if you were to get the prescription and you want to start doing this, well, let me ask you this: do you need a prescription, or can people just download this?
You do need a prescription for now. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that this is really. We conceptualize this as a medical product, like a medication that needs to be really overseen with the oversight of a prescriber.
So if your doctor doesn't know much about this, who would oversee it? Does EndeavorRx give you a coach or anybody to help you?
No, we don't. I mean, we have a team. We have a team that works with me. I'm the chief medical officer at the company to provide information about the science and the medicine behind it. There's a lot of information on that website that you can find.
Yeah.
And stay tuned. I mean, our goal is to really continue to raise awareness and educate, because it's a completely new class of treatment. And so we recognize that we've got some burden on us to be able to raise awareness. Is it
easy for parents to manage themselves?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of helping the kids, it's pretty user friendly. Like I said, it is not, we really have to educate parents and kids that this is not just going to play Minecraft for 25 minutes a day. I mean, because it is a treatment, there are challenges. And part of the uniqueness of the treatment is that it adapts very, very sort of exquisitely to each individual's gameplay patterns. And so being able to stick with that is where you really get the good benefit.
I mean, talk about some of the people, the brains who went into this, the science who went into this. I know parents are still probably wondering about, oh, really? Is this going to work? But there's a difference in this maybe compared to some of the other apps and games out there that say they are good for ADHD. Talk about the science and the brain power that went into this.
Yeah, well, it's like it's had a long history that is, I think, first and foremost rooted in science and evidence. The original sort of prototype for the treatment came, as I mentioned before, out of the lab of Dr. Ghazali at UCSF. Publications in some of the highest tiered medical journal or scientific journals. One of the sort of main papers was in the journal Nature, which is about as good as it gets in terms of rigor and science. There was also a lot of work from a range of other scientists, academically based scientists, who were studying games for health. That's this whole field of how games can actually improve health. And then once they got to the point where, okay, we've got a product that we can now evaluate, that's when they came to where I was at Duke University at the time, at the Duke Clinical Research Institute, where that's what we did, is ran clinical trials for new treatments, whether it was devices and digital health or traditional pharmaceutical products. And we worked very closely with them to design these studies. And the Achille has continued to sort of really push the importance of continuing to do studies and publish the papers, so that credibility is key here. This is not just an app that was built in somebody's garage, and we want to market it out to the masses.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important distinction, and I know you're on the same thing with the path of getting it perhaps one day covered by insurance. Let me ask you this: if you have a flexible spending health account, would you be able to use that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good for a lot of people who have those at work, and they could get those.
I actually, Carolyn, I am. I don't want to. I think so.
Okay. Well,
now that I say that,
That's okay.
I don't want to say that as definitively, but I think so.
You know what? I encourage people to check it. I know everyone's program's a little bit different, and you're the doctor here, not the insurance expert. But I'm just trying to give people access of how they might be able to do this. Just the fact that it's FDA cleared might give you some differences. A lot of times those accounts allow us to pay for supplements and massage and things like that aren't always covered.
Yep.
This was done with kids 8 to 12, and you used the TOVA test, which is a test of variables of attention, and that's where you saw the clinical significance. What if you have a kid who is not in that age group, like a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, or people who weren't studied? Would it still be good for them?
Well, we've just finished a study that actually we expect to have the results in the next couple months. It was another larger scale study, a couple hundred teenagers. So we will soon be able to provide answer to that exact question. And we hope to, if the results are positive, we'd like to be able to go back, expand the label such that we can say, look, this is also effective for an older age group.
Okay. Right now, you don't have the clinical data. Is there any kind of anecdotal information for parents who are willing to try it? It's not going to hurt them, or it's best to just, right now, you're only going to get a prescription if you're 8 to 12?
Well, I mean, it's always at the discretion of the healthcare provider, just like any other medical treatment. We don't have the clinical data to support that now. I will. You mentioned safety, not with the adolescent study, which, as I said, is sort of just wrapping up. But in the initial, in our pivotal studies with the 8 to 12-year-olds, we had a virtually benign side effect profile. We don't have side effects. There was some frustration, some kids got headaches, but that was about it. So it is a very safe product.
Yeah. For some parents who have already researched alternative therapies, and we've done a lot on that on CURES and on Great Day Connecticut, biofeedback. We did a story on play attention, which was also a teacher who developed a similar thing. They're saying it's cognitive training. There's the brain gyms. There's all these things that also might sound similar if parents are looking into this. How is yours different?
Well, and I listened to a good piece that you did on mindfulness in kids, which that's also another area I've done some work in the past. But our treatment is different from the standpoint of just I think really setting it up as a medical product that's been evaluated in the same way as traditional medications, but it's a piece of a treatment program, and it shouldn't be considered, this is the one and only thing that I should try for my kid. You've got to take a holistic view of what's going to be the most effective, in combination with other treatments as well.
I love having, a man like yourself who's a clinical psychologist, who's worked in this field, who has such expertise. So I got to just ask you some other questions beyond the video game. Maybe parents might want to try EndeavorRx, and you can go to EndeavorRx.com. You can talk to your pediatrician, all these things. But what other things, since this is your expertise, should parents be doing? What do you wish parents out there knew with regard to food or scheduling or anything? As you mentioned, this is a holistic process for kids.
Yeah. I think, boy, that's a good question. I'm also a parent of a 12-year-old with ADHD. So I was studying this before it hit me personally, but I think the biggest thing that in my clinical life is really, really getting parents to understand and appreciate the importance of all things non-pharmacological. Medication helps, absolutely. But when it helps the most is when it is augmented by, whether it's behavior, and you mentioned a lot of them. It might be behavior therapy. It might be just organizational and skills training. It might be mindfulness. And those are things sort of specific for ADHD. And then there's the things that are good for all kids, but that we also know are good for kids with, especially good for kids with ADHD, like a good, well-rounded diet, like exercise, like a good sleep routine. So I think these things in combination, and just, I mean, you said it in your question, getting parents to really appreciate that this is more than just giving a pill. That's, you know, if we could really raise awareness about that, we'd be making progress.
Right. It's pills and skills together is often, I know, the phrase that a lot of people in your field will use. We want the pills and the skills. But you raise a good point. I think there's a lot of resistance among kids to go to therapy. It's also difficult to access and may not be paid for. So if it's going to be $100 an hour, or at least every week, and your kid is screaming and doesn't want to go, and the parent doesn't have insurance, that might be really hard. So this is something that maybe you get a little bit more buy-in, which is also the advice often with kids with ADHD. They tend to be a little bit of a force of nature, and sometimes getting their buy-in can be helpful.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Yes, I know from experience as well. But and just to end on a positive note, I think we talk so much about how to help ADHD, but I also I don't want to end this program without saying that ADHD really can be a superpower. I mean, the CEO of JetBlue has said he couldn't have created JetBlue without ADHD. Many other, there's literature that suggests that Albert Einstein had ADHD. So this is really helping a different kind of brain, but this is not, I kind of know there's a movement to not call this a disability. And though you want the accommodations, a lot of people would say it's not a disability, it's a different ability.
Yeah, it is a different ability. And I think that reminds me of a question that comes up a lot when I see patients and treating them, especially about medication treatment, is because there's a lore that this sort of zombifies or tamps down the wonderful personalities of kids with ADHD. And what I always tell them, which I think is exactly consistent with your point, is, you know, the goal of any kind of treatment is not to change the wonderful attributes of any person, but it's to really address the kinds of things that interfere with them being sort of the full version of themselves. And it's going to be different for different kids and adults. It's, you know, for some it might be school, for some it might be their peer and social functioning, but really figuring out how do these symptoms interface in a world that might not be, you know, completely ready for them, but not change the core of the individual. I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, well, thank you for the great work. I'm sure there's much more to come, so I'm sure we can do more stories on this as well as parents are starting to learn about it. Like I said, I mentioned it maybe a few months ago to my pediatrician who'd never heard of it, and he's a pretty smart guy. So the word is just getting out. If you want to educate yourself, that's why it's a podcast on the cutting edge of wellness. If you're watching on WFSB Plus, then you can see the good doctor right here. It's EndeavorRx.com. If you're listening on the podcast, we definitely encourage you to also share this in your social media feed so that more people can hear about it, and just go to EndeavorRx.com. But Dr. Kollins, we appreciate you taking the time to really explain this so people can learn.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, Kara. Look, and be happy to come and give an update at any point.
Absolutely. We'll keep in touch. I know this is not the end of this journey for the game and for what parents need to know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us on Kara's Cures, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. You can follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin. I do post this content there. We appreciate you sharing it and supporting this work. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.